Okay, so let's talk about physiology of hearing. Under physiology of hearing, the topics we have to know are the parts of the ear, that is the functional anatomy, the details of the inner ear, including the details of the organ of corti, the outer hair cell, the inner hair cell, and the stereocilia, mechanism of stimulation of auditory hair cell, sound transmission and mechanism of hearing, central auditory pathway, that is the pathway of hearing, the deafness, and a little bit of other important miscellaneous applied. Okay, now before going on to physiology of hearing, let me give you a brief overview of ear. So here, ear is basically a seat of two modalities. What are the modalities? Those are hearing and equilibrium. You've already done equilibrium. Okay, now it's time for hearing. What are the parts involved with hearing? Those are the external ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear, that is mainly the cochlea. And just to recap, what are the parts involved with equilibrium? Those are the utricle, the saccule, and the semicircular canals. What are the different types of semicircular canals? Those are anterior, lateral, and posterior semicircular canals. Now the specialized receptor for both hearing and balance are hair cells. These are for both hearing and balance. You already have a little bit of idea about the hair cells because you have done balance. You have done vestibular system. Okay, so this is nothing new to you. Okay, so there are basically 6 patches of hair cells in the inner ear. Those are the cochlea. Those are present in the cochlea, the utricle, the saccule, the anterior semicircular canal, the lateral semicircular canal, and the posterior semicircular canal. So cochlear hair cells are associated with hearing. The utricle are associated with linear acceleration, saccule with vertical acceleration. The anterior, lateral, and posterior semicircular canals are basically associated with rotational acceleration in that particular plane. Okay, so just to give you an idea what parts and what is involved in hearing, let me tell you the sequence of events that takes place when you hear a sound. So first, what is happening? Sound waves So what is happening? Sound waves enter the external auditory canal. Then from there they cause vibration of tympanic membrane. From there what is happening? There is, due to lever action of the ossicles, there is vibration in the oval window. This is followed by vibration in scala media. I'll tell you what these parts are, okay? Just this is to give you an idea of the chain of events. There's vibration in the scala media. There is movement, up and down movement of basilar membrane. This is followed by movement of outer hair cell. This is followed by movement of inner hair cell. This is followed by release of neurotransmitter glutamate. So there is ultimately action potential generation. This is carried by the auditory pathway to the auditory cortex. Okay, so you got an overview of the different steps involved in perception of sound. Okay, now let's talk about the parts of the ear. The parts of the ear are external ear, middle ear and inner ear. This is a very simplified diagram of the ear. Okay, so these are the major structures. So the external ear consisting of the pinna and the external auditory canal. Then we have the tympanic membrane which separates the external auditory canal from the middle ear. Now the middle ear consists of the ossicular chain, that is the malleus, incus, steps. The middle ear is also connected to the nasopharynx and ultimately to the outside atmosphere through the eustachian tube. And finally the inner ear, which consists of the 2.5 turns of the cochlea and the semicircular canals. Now nerves carrying information from the semicircular canals and cochlea all converge to form the cranial nerve 8, okay, or the vestibulocochlear nerve. So the nerves carrying information from the semicircular canals form the vestibular division, while the information carried from the cochlea forms the cochlear division. Okay, so these are the major parts of the ear. Now let's come to the external ear. The external ear is made up of the pinna and the external auditory canal, EAC. Okay, so what is the pinna? Pinna is basically made up of elastic cartilage. It's made up of elastic cartilage and it is covered by a thin layer of skin which is closely adherent to the perichondrium. Of course, not the lobule is not made up of elastic cartilage, it is made up of soft tissue. The remaining part of the pinna is made up of elastic cartilage and covered by a very thin layer of skin which is closely adherent to the perichondrium. Now let's come to the external auditory canal. It is 24 millimeter in length and is divided into two parts. The outer cartilaginous part, sorry about the spelling, it's wrong, cartilaginous part, and the inner bony part. Okay, the outer cartilaginous part forms 1/3 of the EAC, while the inner part forms the 2/3 of the EAC. 1/3 is 8 millimeter, 2/3 is 16 millimeter. The outer part is covered by skin which contains hair follicles, sebaceous glands, ceruminous glands, and thus the ceruminous glands leads to wax formation. Wax formation occurs in the outer cartilaginous part of the external auditory canal. Okay, while the inner bony part is covered by skin which does not contain any hair follicles or sebaceous glands or ceruminous glands. Now the directions. The outer cartilaginous part is directed medially, upwards and outwards, while the inner bony part is directed medially. Of course, it is directed medially. Both of the parts are directed medially, downwards and forwards. So what is happening? The canal initially is directed upwards and outwards, then goes downwards and forwards. Okay, this you have to know this. This is important because while examining the external ear, you have to pull the pinna in the opposite direction of these to get a proper view of the canal. That is, you need to pull it in the opposite direction to straighten out the canal so that you can examine it properly. Now let's come on to the tympanic membrane. What is tympanic membrane? Tympanic membrane is basically a membranous structure which separates the external ear and from the middle ear. It consists of two parts, pars tensa and pars flaccida. Okay, you will learn the details of this in anatomy, and then you will learn it in even more detail when you do ENT. Okay, so you just need to know that the tympanic membrane has two parts, the pars tensa and the pars flaccida, and it also provides attachment to the handle of malleus. I'll come to the ossicles, parts of the ossicles. Handle of malleus. Okay, so what is the importance of tympanic membrane? The tympanic membrane along with the ossicular chain helps in impedance matching. Remember this is very important. The tympanic membrane along with the ossicular chain helps in impedance matching. What is impedance matching? Impedance matching is magnification of sound in the middle ear is known as impedance matching. How is magnification of sound occurring? It is due to two things. First, the lever action of the ossicular chain, and next the smaller area of oval window as compared to the tympanic membrane. So oval window is basically 3 mm square, while tympanic membrane is about 63 mm square. So you can see how magnification occurs. Tympanic membrane is much larger when compared to the oval window. Thus, the vibration from the tympanic membrane when transferred to the oval window, it is much magnified. So why is impedance matching required? Impedance matching is basically required to initially overcome the inertia of the ossicular chain, and next it prevents dampening of sound. What is happening? The middle ear consists of air, is filled with air. So the sound is traveling from air to the liquid in the cochlea. So sound will be dampened. To overcome that, impedance matching is required. Okay, so you understand what is impedance matching? Now let us move on to middle ear. Okay, now let's talk about the middle ear. The middle ear is basically an air-filled cavity present in the temporal bone. It opens via the eustachian tube into the nasopharynx and thus to the exterior. The eustachian tube is usually closed, but it can open during swallowing, chewing, yawning, basically when the air pressure on both sides is equalized. It is a six-sided box. It consists of 6 walls, out of which the lateral wall and the medial wall is important for understanding the physiology of hearing. Now, so the medial wall is formed by the tympanic membrane. Okay, the lateral wall is formed by the tympanic membrane. The medial wall is formed by promontory. What is promontory? Promontory is basically the smooth bony projection due to basal turn of cochlea. It's a smooth bony projection, and this is due to the basal turn of cochlea. Okay, and the medial wall is also formed by the oval window and the round window. Now, the other walls you will learn in anatomy and later on in ENT. Just to mention it, the roof is formed by tegment tympani, which is a thin plate of bone which separates the cavity, this middle ear cavity, from the middle cranial fossa. The floor is formed by a thin plate of bone separating the cavity from the jugular bulb. That is, jugular bulb is present here. This is the floor. The jugular bulb is present here. The roof, here you have middle cranial fossa. Then the anterior wall is very narrow and it is formed by the canal for the chorda tympani, the canal for the tensor tympani, the eustachian tube orifice and the wall of the carotid canal. And the posterior wall is formed by the deeper part of the posterior tympanum containing the distending part of the facial nerve. These all you'll learn all these in details in anatomy. Okay. Now let's go on to the ossicles. So there are 3 ossicles. What are the 3 ossicles? Those are malleus, incus and stapes. And there are 2 muscles. The muscles are tensor tympani and stapedius. So look at this diagram. This is a simplified diagram of the ossicular chain. You can see the malleus here, the incus and the stapes. So this is the handle or the manubrium of the malleus, which is attached to the tympanic membrane. Then the head of the malleus, which articulates with the body of the incus. Then the lenticular process of the incus articulates with the head of the stapes. And then finally the foot plate of the stapes rests on the oval window. Okay, so this is the ossicular. This 3 small bones forms the ossicular chain. Now, what are the functions of the muscles of the middle ear? The muscles, this tensor tympani, helps in contraction of the tympanic membrane. Okay, so it tenses the tympanic membrane. And the stapedius muscle, what does the stapedius muscle do? It protects the inner ear from excessive sound. How does it do? How does it protect? It protects by pulling the foot plate away from the oval window. When there is a loud sound, the stapedius contracts and pulls the foot plate away from the oval window. Okay, so that this loud sound doesn't reach in a magnified manner to the inner ear. What has happened? The air wave sets up vibrations in tympanic membrane, which is then transferred via the ossicular chain to the, what did I say? This is attached to, this is rests upon the oval window. So this vibration is transferred to the oval window, and this process undergoes magnification, which is known as impedance matching. Okay, you need to know about impedance matching. Now let us talk about the inner ear. The inner ear is present in the petrous part of the temporal bone. It consists of cochlea and the vestibular apparatus. You already know, you have already done a class on vestibular apparatus, so I am not going to repeat it. Okay, it consists of 2 structures, 2 parts, the membranous labyrinth and the bony labyrinth. Okay, the membranous labyrinth consists of a potassium rich fluid This is known as endolymph. It is here the potassium is high and the sodium is low, while the rest of the space is filled up with a fluid called perilymph, whose composition is similar to the ECF. So, in high sodium and low potassium. So, the composition of endolymph and perilymph is opposite. Endolymph is potassium rich, while perilymph is similar to ECF. Cochlea is basically a coiled tube 2 and 3/4 turns around a bony structure called the modulus. Okay, it is 35 millimeter in length. The cochlea, now here, come here, look at this. This is the cross section of the cochlea. Okay, cross section of the cochlea. You can see that the cochlea is divided into 3 chambers by 2 membranes. The Reissner membrane or Reissner membrane and the basilar membrane. Okay, the chambers are scala vestibuli, scala media and scala tympani. The scala vestibuli and the scala tympani contains perilymph and communicates with each other, while the scala media contains endolymph and this chamber does not communicate with any of the other chambers. The scala media is basically continuous with the membranous labyrinth. So what did I say? Membranous labyrinth contains endolymph. So scala media also contains endolymph. Now the scala tympani and the scala vestibuli communicate with each other at the apex through a small opening called helicotrema. Here we have helicotrema. Okay, so this is the basal part, this is the apical part, and the scala vestibuli and the scala tympani communicate with each other via a opening called helicotrema in the apical part. Now at the base, the scala vestibuli ends at the oval window. See, here's the oval window, while the scala tympani ends at the round window. This round window is covered by a secondary tympanic membrane. Okay, now the scala media, as I have said, is continuous with the membranous labyrinth, and it does not communicate either with the scala vestibuli or the scala tympani, and it contains endolymph. It also contains the tectorial membrane. Okay, so the potential difference between the endolymph and the perilymph is 80 millivolt. Okay, I'll come to this later. This is very important. The potential difference between the endolymph and the perilymph is 80 millivolt. Now the base of the cochlea is wider than the apex, and the basal part is involved with transmission of high frequency loss. Now the organ of Corti rests on the basilar membrane. There is a structure called stria vascularis, which is responsible for production of the endolymph. And cochlea also contains a spiral ganglia which contains the nucleus of all the axons, and they form the cochlear division of the cranial nerve 8. Okay, I'll come to this later. Okay, now let's talk about basilar membrane. What is basilar membrane? Basilar membrane is a fibrous membrane which separates the scala media from the scala tympani. It consists of basically 20,000 to 30,000 basilar fibers that project from the bony center of the cochlea, that is project from the modulus. Projects from modulus. So the basilar membrane is attached to a bony structure at one end but free at the other end. So it behaves like the reeds of a harmonica. So the basilar membrane is attached to the bony structure at one end, that is the modulus. At one end it is attached, at the other end it is free. Now the length of the basilar fibers increases from base to apex. Length increases from base to apex. Basically, there is a 12-fold increase of length, while the diameter of the fibers decreases from base to apex. There is a 100-fold decrease in stiffness. Okay, so what do we get at the base? At the base we get short, stiff fibers, while at the apex we get long, floppy fibers. So what is the base? The base is basically at the oval window, and the apex is basically where the helicotrema. Okay, these are considered to be representatives of the base and the apex. So at the base we have the short, stiff fibers, while at the apex we have long, floppy fibers. Now these short, stiff fibers vibrate best at high frequency. These vibrate best at high frequency, while the long, floppy fibers vibrate best at low frequency. So we can deduce that high frequency resonance occurs at base, while low frequency resonance occurs at apex. Okay, this is a very important concept. Base is high frequency while apex is low frequency. Okay, now a little bit about the traveling wave theory. Before going on to the traveling wave theory, you need to know what is tonotopic arrangement of the basilar membrane. What does it mean? What does the tonotopic arrangement mean? This means that particular parts of the basilar membrane vibrate maximally at particular frequency. That is, each point of the basilar membrane has a frequency at which frequency as a basically that is known as a native frequency or resonant point, where there is maximum vibration when that frequency strikes the basilar membrane. Okay, so this is known as tonotopic arrangement. Each point of the basilar membrane vibrate maximally at different frequencies. Now what is happening? Each wave is weak at onset and then becomes strongest when it reaches the portion of the basilar membrane which has the natural resonance frequency equal to the respective sound frequency. At this point of frequency matching, the basilar membrane vibrates back and forth with ease and the wave dies at this point. Therefore, what is happening? The wave is starting at the base wave onset. Then it is traveling through the basilar membrane and it reaches a point on the basilar membrane where the basilar membrane vibrates maximally and has a natural resonance frequency equal to the frequency of the sound waves. Okay, here we are assuming that a sound wave has one frequency. Okay, so this sound wave with a single frequency starts at the base. It's weak here, then it travels along the basilar membrane, reaches a point where the natural resonance of the basilar membrane is equal to the frequency of the sound wave, and then there is maximum resonance, that is to and fro movement of the basilar membrane is maximum, and the wave dies at this point of natural resonance. Thus, high frequency waves travel only a short distance and dies at the base, because as we said, the base resonates at a high frequency. Mid frequency waves travels about halfway along the basilar membrane, while low frequency waves travels up to the apex of the basilar membrane. Okay, so thus sound with many different frequencies. Up till now we were assuming that a wave has a single frequency, but that is not the case in nature. That is not the case in nature. What is happening? Sound has many frequencies. So the sound with many frequencies stimulates different parts of the basilar membrane at the same time. Okay, so the basilar membrane basically behaves as a string instrument. This is the traveling wave theory. It starts at the base, travels along the basilar membrane, reaches the point where the natural frequency of the basilar membrane is equal to the frequency of the sound. There is maximum vibration of the basilar membrane at that resonant point. Then the wave dies down. Okay, so this was all about the basilar membrane. Now let's talk about the organ of Corti. What is the organ of Corti? Organ of Corti is basically the sense organ of hearing, and it is present on the basilar membrane. It is the site of mechano-electrical transduction. Okay, it is a site of mechano-electrical transduction, as the organ of Corti receives sound and converts it to electrical impulse. Okay, so it receives a mechanical energy like sound energy and converts it into action potential, which is an electrical impulse. It extends from the apex to base and is spiral in shape. Okay, so let's come to this diagram. The organ of Corti is present on top of the basilar membrane. This whole thing is the organ of Corti. Okay, it consists of highly specialized hair cells, the outer hair cells and the inner hair cells, piercing a thin membrane called the reticular lamina, and these hair cells are supported by the supporting cells, are kept in place by the supporting cells. Now the reticular lamina is supported by rods of Corti, structures known as rods of Corti. These are the rods of Corti. The rods of Corti enclose a space known as tunnel of Corti. This tunnel of Corti contains perilymph. Okay, so basilar membrane, specialized hair cells, these are outer hair cells and inner hair cells. These are supporting cells. These hair cells pierce the reticular lamina. The reticular lamina is supported by the rods of Corti. The rods of Corti enclose a space known as the tunnel of Corti. The hair cells are arranged in 4 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4. It is arranged in 4 rows. So, 3 rows of outer hair cell containing basically 20,000 outer hair cells, and 1 row of inner hair cell containing only about 3,500 inner hair cells. Okay, now back to the diagram. The hair cells are covered by a thin elastic membrane known as the tectorial membrane. The outer hair cells are in contact with the tectorial membrane, that is, they pierce the reticular lamina and are in contact with the tectorial membrane, while the inner hair cell is not in contact with the tectorial membrane. Okay. Now the tips of the hair cells are bathed in endolymph, while the base is bathed in perilymph. Okay, let's see how this is occurring. Let's go back to the diagram here. We can see this is the organ of Corti, this is the tectorial membrane, this organ of Corti rests on the basilar membrane. The tips, where are the tips? The tips is in the scalar media, which is filled with endolymph. Therefore, the tips are bathed in endolymph, while the base is in contact with the scala tympani, thus it is bathed with perilymph. Now the perilymph can cross the basilar membrane, and thus it crosses the basilar membrane and bathes the base of the organ of Corti. But the endolymph cannot cross the basilar membrane, cannot reach the base because of the tight junctions between the supporting cells and the hair cells. Okay, so you understand, the upper part bathed in endolymph, the lower part, the base bathed in perilymph. The endolymph does not reach the base because of tight junctions, whilst the perilymph can cross this basilar membrane to bathe the lower part. Okay, so the thing to remember is the basilar fibers, the rods of Corti and the reticular lamina move as a single unit. You will understand why this movement is important when I do the details of mechanotransduction. Okay, the cell bodies of the sensory nerves which arborize around the bases of the hair cells are located in the spiral ganglia. Okay, so there are nerves present around the bases of these hair cells. The sensory nucleus, that is the cell bodies of these sensory nerves, that is the nucleus of these sensory nerves, are present in the spiral ganglia, and the spiral ganglia is located within the modulus. So the spiral ganglia contains the cell nucleus or cell bodies, while the axons are present around the base of the hair cells. Then the axons join to form the cochlear division or auditory division of cranial nerve 8. Okay, so cranial nerve is mixed nerve. It contains both afferent and efferent supply. So the fibers are both afferent and efferent. The sensory nerve fibers supplying the hair cells are both afferent and efferent. 90% of afferent fibers end on the IHC, that is the inner hair cells, while only 5 to 10% they do not end on IHC. Now let's come to the nerve supply of the hair cells. The hair cells have nerve fibers, that is axons, around their bases. The cell bodies of these axons are present in the spiral ganglia. So the cell bodies are present in the spiral ganglia. The spiral ganglia is present in the modulus. Okay. Cell bodies are present in the spiral ganglia. Then axons are present around bases of the hair cells. Then these axons join to form the cochlear division or auditory division of the cranial nerve 8. Cranial nerve 8 is basically a mixed nerve. What does mixed nerve mean? Both afferent fibers and efferent fibers. Now 90% of the afferent fibers supply IHC, that is inner hair cells, while 5 to 10% supply outer hair cells. It's just the opposite for efferent. Most of the efferent fibers end on OHC, while only a few end on IHC. So what's the difference between the outer hair cells and inner hair cells? There are certain differences. The outer hair cell comprises of 3 rows, while the inner hair cell comprises of 1 row. The outer hair cell is 20,000 in number, while the inner hair cell is 3,500 in number. The outer hair cell is in contact with tectorial membrane, while the inner hair cell is not in contact with the tectorial membrane. The outer hair cell, function of the outer hair cell is amplification of movement of basilar membrane, while the inner hair cell, the function is release of glutamate after depolarization. I'll come to this later. The outer hair cell has more efferent nerve supply, while the inner hair cell has more afferent nerve supply. The outer hair cell has motor protein prestin, while the inner hair cell does not have prestin. So these are some of the differences between the outer hair cell and inner hair cell. Okay, now as you know, the vestibular system also has hair cells, but the structure of the cochlear hair cells and the vestibular hair cells are somewhat different. The vestibular hair cells has kynocelia. You have already done this. Vestibular hair cells have kynocelia, while the cochlear hair cells do not have kynocelia. Okay, now we will go on to the structure of the hair cells. Okay, we have done the structure of the cochlea, the structure of the basilar membrane, the structure of the organ of Corti. Now let's learn a little bit about the structure of the cochlear hair cells. So this is a diagram of the cochlear hair cells. This whole blue thing is the hair cell. The hair cell is embedded in supporting cells, which are also known as Dieter cells. Now we have already learnt that the tips of the hair cells are present in the scala media and thus bathed in endolymph, while the bases are bathed in perilymph. And for the outer hair cell is overlaid by a tectorial membrane, while the inner hair cell is not overlaid by the tectorial membrane. Projecting from the apical part of the hair cell are 30 to 150 rod-like rigid structures. These are known as stereocilia. So what are stereocilia? Stereocilia are rigid cylinders composed of actin and coated with an isomer of myosin. The actin is arranged in parallel filaments. Okay. Now as you can see in the diagram, the filaments, the stereocilia gradually increase in length and they taper towards the insertion. The ends of the stereocilia are connected via very fine strands known as stiplings, and at the tip there are mechanosensitive cation channels through which potassium and calcium enters. Mechanosensitive cation channels through which potassium and calcium enters and causes depolarization and glutamate release. Okay, so this was the structure of cochlear hair cells in a nutshell. We have already done vestibular hair cells. The vestibular hair cells contain a kynocelia, while the cochlear hair cells lack a kynocelia.